Good afternoon, friends. It's Valerie Ling here, coming to you on a Saturday. Today, oh, there's that popping up. Brilliant. Uh, Interesting questions that I have been getting these lately because I am a parent of a high schooler. My son has actually finished his high school. Well, kind of finished. He's being recalled at the moment because here in Sydney, where I live, the final exams for our graduating high school students have been pushed back because of the pandemic and things like, having to do exams when we're in lockdown has pushed the timeline out a bit. And so I have had some wonderful friends and family express concern, and in fact just the other day my son was actually sharing with me that he's received messages from family as well, just checking in on him to see how he's doing. And of course I have my own friends who have their kids who are doing their final year of high school and going through the very same anxieties or uncertainties. And I kind of noticed that my answer tends to be a bit open-ended. I am, and of course, as all of us are, concerned about the health and mental health of young people during COVID-19, and trying to get him to eat and making sure he's sleeping and moving. But for the most part, have remained fairly open, flexible in my answer to how do I actually feel about his academic progress. And I've been waiting for this book and have been plowing into it today. It's called Generation Alpha. It's a McCrindle research book, Mark McCrindle and Ashley Fell with Sam Buckerfield. Basically, McCrindle research, they research trends and data, and I've been reading about how Generation Alpha, which I should really reference that, but basically Generation Alpha is anybody born from 2010 onwards. So my son is not in Generation Alpha. Nevertheless, I thought that some of the things that they had to say in this book were pretty relevant. And the answer to the question of how do I feel at this point in time about the students being disrupted, definitely a sense of compassion that they're needing to juggle quite so many changes. Definitely also a sense of admiration that in the last 24 months, this group of kids that are going through the pandemic are adapting, and they're doing the best that they can. So definitely a sense of admiration, but I have to say also a degree of optimism. And I want to share with you a couple of things from what I've read what is it, afternoon? Oh my goodness, it's already 3:30 in the afternoon. I've just been lost in my reading today. A couple of things from the book. The title is called The Future of Work. Basically, this book is saying that if you look at the Generation Alpha, so those who are born in 2010, they're going to be some of the most educated generation of all. So rates of going into university is increasing. However, if you actually look at the mental health of students, very interestingly, I think the data is suggesting that the push to perform is on a vast majority of kids' minds. So even if parents are being relaxed, even if schools are giving a relaxed message, this is a very measured and goal-orientated world that we live in. You're measured by tests. Everything measures you. Even this thing that you wear measures you. It's constantly giving you data and feedback. The social gamified world that we live in constantly has some kind of metric, whether a number of likes that you've got, the number of views that you've got. So the entire mentality of the generations that are coming out is one where it is measured. A number, a quantity, gives you a sense of your worth and your identity and helps you to know how you're doing in relation to everybody else. And so therefore, whether it's in schools, the innate intrinsic acceptance that my worth and what I'm really dealing with as a kid is how I'm going to perform as compared to others is very real. And so interestingly, this book is suggesting that for educators, one of the top priorities at the moment is not necessarily about literacy and numeracy, but it is about mental health and well-being, helping our kids and these generations that are coming through to actually change or adapt or work through the sense of worth that comes from measurement and success. And so what this book is actually saying is that while they're going to be the most educated generation to come out, there's an interesting statistic here that says something along the lines of, if I can find it, I think for our primary school students who are going through primary school right now, 67% of the jobs that they will, oh, here we go. 65%, according to the World Economic Forum, it predicts that 65% of children entering primary school today will end up working in job types that don't even exist. They will have jobs that don't even exist. I will ask you, oh people of my generation, do you remember when you actually have to take film somewhere to get produced? Do you remember there would actually be people that you would hand over those canisters? I remember getting in trouble because I hadn't realized that you shouldn't open the canister on the way to getting it processed when I was a kid, which completely exposed the film. You know, there are careers and jobs right now that do not exist anymore. You can view that with a sense of fear. The other way to view it is basically that our kids basically just need to have a love of learning and adaptability and a sense of who they are and how they can bring purpose and how they can serve in society. The reason why I bring up serving is the other thing that this book is saying, and which I wholeheartedly agree, because I myself have noticed this very much in the practice that we work in, is that a large percentage of kids, well, actually a large percentage of us in the workplace, let alone the kids, just feel lonely. We don't feel like we belong. We don't feel like we've got people that we can, really connect with. And so actually having a career or work that promotes a connection and community is going to be a top priority for our kids as they head out. Some other interesting things here. So there's a quote here from Google's former Senior Vice President of People Operations, Laszlo Bock, that says, academic qualifications will still be taken into account and indeed remain an important consideration when assessing candidates as a whole, but will no longer act as a barrier to getting a foot in the door, added Maggie Stillwell, Ernst & Young's managing partner for talent. I'm certainly seeing that change. We're in the midst of recruiting ourselves, and one of the platforms we use is LinkedIn. And LinkedIn now has this option for people to send in short videos for applications. And the questions that are the standard questions really have nothing to do with experience, what degree you had, what grades you got, and everything to do with tell me who you are, tell me what value you will add, tell me what your purpose is, tell me, it's all about the who and the why of the person. And so when I think about Year 12 students, I can't help but think of the wonderful team that I work with. One young person in particular who has written a couple of blogs. If you go to our page, effectiveliving.com.au, I'm pretty sure it would be under the category of study. I'll post it in here after my blog. A very capable, winsome young person who worked with me for a while, whom I very sadly had to say to them, I think you need to look for other type of work, because I was starting to recognize that this person was very capable in our business for what they wanted to achieve. I believe that they needed to build themselves a work experience and network portfolio that would help them to get further. But I'll say, but come back after that, come back. you know, at our workplace, I have been impressed by the level of humble care and compassion that have come from the people who work with us, who have taken very varied and curly paths to become psychologists. And that's because they're driven to care. They're driven to make a difference. They're driven to work with vulnerability, with gentleness, and to restore dignity. And not one of them really comes through very standard pathways. That's not to say that there aren't people who have come through standard pathways. However, I'm always impressed by the genuine formation of a human being who has had to go through a more difficult, more challenging path to get to the point where they are serving and contributing to others. And so when I look at this year group that is going through, while I completely understand, even as a parent and as as a therapist, that it is very difficult and there are some mounting pressures and difficulties, I also have a great deal of optimism that if we can help them to see that there are always different pathways, the world of work is changing. Even through the pandemic, the ways that we can learn, the ways that we absorb information has changed so dramatically. There are courses, there are videos, there are relationships that can shape and nurture you as part of a journey of discovering yourself and also discovering how you best serve others. If we can help them to see that the HSC, this is what we call it in Sydney, in New South Wales, the higher school certificate, which is our final exams, they are not the summation of 12 years of education that defines you. They are merely one more point of experience that provides our young people with the opportunity to say, that was pretty challenging. This is what I learned about myself, how I study best. I learned that by teaching others, I learned the concept. I figured out that this subject opens up this other things in my brain. I learned that this subject, not so much. I learned that during a global pandemic, people cared enough to try to check in on me. I discovered that sometimes having a different way of doing an exam through a computer was not as bad as I thought. I discovered that in human suffering and in my suffering, I discovered ways that I could cope and ways that I could, go through it. This is all part of learning to be a human being and an adulting through adversity. I'd just like to finish with a quote from this book, because it is the book that I am particularly, I'm delving into today. I've got two books that I've been reading today. And here's a quote from the book that is by Anna McGahan, an actor and writer, who wrote to the 2020 graduating class. And I shall finish with this. Dear Year 12 student, I almost didn't complete Year 12. School felt insurmountable. There was so much pressure to make it the year that defined my future, and so many times I felt like I squandered that pivotal time. But I can tell you 15 years later, now a professional actor and writer, a loved friend, a leader, partner, and mother, that it could not be further from the truth. Trust me. Year 12 only takes you to the edge of Earth's atmosphere, my friend. There's a whole universe out there waiting to embrace you. Lovely quote. Farewell.